to our Columbus Chamber of Commerce's Experience Series. Just a few years ago, our Experience Series was really varied topics. We would have a segment on marketing or launching your business or things of that nature. But times changed, and workforce became such an incredibly important issue for all of our small business owners at the Chamber. And what we did was decide to take the entire Experience Series, 3 or 4 events every year, and really focus on talent and workforce development. So we are. I'm Don DePero. I'm your president and CEO of the Columbus. So great to see all of you. And we brought you a Columbus morning, weather-wise, out here. This glorious morning. And after this winter that just didn't want to go away, it's great to have a beautiful morning for us. We really appreciate all you being here. I know we had over 80. So it was a great turnout and just points up just how important our interests are in attracting and retaining is to all of us, right? It's the heartbeat of our business. Succeed or don't succeed based on our associates. Really, you, our hosts this morning at this beautiful space, accounting and professional services firm, the largest non-Big Four firm. In fact, know that they're bigger than one of the Big Four here in town. And we enjoy the pleasure at the Chamber of having our board chair, Darcy, is the managing director here at GBQ. And so we thank GBQ and Darcy for sponsoring the Experience Series. And to you now. Thanks so much for being here. Darcy.
Thanks, Don. Welcome, everyone. GBQ World Headquarters. We are based here in Columbus, been here for about, and also have offices in Toledo, Cincinnati, and Indianapolis. We are absolutely thrilled to have people in person, live, and greeting and meeting and talking. We haven't been doing that for so long, as I'm sure you haven't either. So we are on a roll this week. We're hosting you this morning. We have our annual St. Patrick's Day Green Bagels thing for our client tomorrow morning. And then we're co-hosting a March Madness party on Friday. So we're back and we're excited. GBQ represents businesses that range from small businesses in the to huge family-owned businesses with names you would recognize, and some publicly traded companies. What often is the case, have very different service providers working with those different segments of business. What we have seen over the last year and a half plus is that there is one thing that every business, no matter what industry you're in or no matter what size you are, and that's the issue with talent. So we know that you're all here for that reason, and we're excited to hear some of what's going on in this emerging workforce. I will give you a little bit of a testimonial that we are experimenting with new kinds of talent ourselves. We typically have gone to campuses and looked for people with Masters of Accounting degrees, and that's it. There are not enough of those people out there right now. So we have a last fall with Columbus State Community College, where we're bringing in almost like permanent interns that are in their associates, them through their schooling. We've also got a program years with the Cristo Rey High School, where we have Cristo Rey students who are in office, which helps pay for their tuition if you're not familiar with that program. So we are dipping our toe into the water here on these kinds of things as well, and we're excited to hear more from our panel today. So I am going to turn it over to Kelly Fuller, who is our Vice President of Workforce and Talent, Workforce and the specific title. I love Kelly. I just call her Kelly. I don't use the title. We'll let her take it away, and thanks for being here.
Good morning, everyone.
Oh, sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Kelly Fuller, Vice President of Talent and Workforce Development at the Columbus Chamber of Commerce, and it's so good to see everyone this morning. We're super excited about helping our business community connect to our area, and we're blessed in Central Ohio and in this region to have programs to talk about. So I'm going to turn it over to our panel here in a second, but first I want to kind of ground us chose this topic. So every day, basically, with our chamber members, we have close to 2,100 and yeah, so we've got a lot. And the vast majority of those are small businesses. And when we talk about small businesses, we refer to those businesses that have 50 or fewer employees. So oftentimes, if you can imagine, with a small business, an HR team or a deep bench of folks to help with that type of work. People, come into the workplace. So act as a connector to some of those resources. So last year, I did a little over 400 consultations with our chamber members. So far, over 100, and the vast majority are saying their number one issue or their number one ask is connect us to high school talent. In fact, close to 40% of my consultations have been businesses saying, how do we find high school students? What does that look like? Help us. We've not worked in that space before. My background is working in the chamber. I have 15 years in career tech experience at Eastern Fairfield Career Technical School. So I have a passion for it and a background and a strong belief in the power of connecting young people to opportunity. So I'm going to turn it over to the panel now. I'm so excited. Not only is this a great panel, they're wonderful friends.
Hi, good morning, everybody. My name is Tiffany Marr. I am the founder and CEO of Wimbler. We are a workforce fintech application.
Good morning. My name is Angie Dye, and I'm the Senior Director of Technology at Mid-Ohio Food Collective.
Good morning. My name is John Hambrick, and I'm the Work-Based Learning Coordinator with the Educational Service Center of Central Ohio. That may be an unfamiliar organization to you. An ESC is a resource for area school districts. There are over 50 ESCs in the state under the umbrella of Ohio Department of Education, and I happen to be aligned with one here in Central Ohio. Thank you.
All right. Good morning. I am Christine Boucher. I am the Business Partnership Coordinator filling Kelly's big shoes. So when she left Eastland Fairfield, but she left a very good trail for me to follow. And I am from Eastland Fairfield, and my role as Business Partnership Coordinator is to connect with people like yourselves from businesses to our programs and our students for a lot of different reasons. But we want to build relationships. We want an ongoing relationship with our business partners and not just a one-time touch, because we get new students all the time. I'm not alone in my role with Career Tech Ed. Career Tech across the Central Ohio area have people similar to myself. Dawn Weaver is here from Southwestern City Schools. She and her counterpart, Debbie, they do the very same thing that I do in connecting with each of you so that you can get the resources and the talent you need out of our emerging workforce.
Thank you. I'm going to start with you, Christine, because you just said something that I think a lot of people want to know is, like, as a business owner or a business leader, like, what are the touch points? Like, how can I get involved? So I talk about how the programs are chosen in the Career Center for high school students and what the business community's involvement is there.
Sure. It's a very important position for businesses because that's where all Career Tech Ed programs start. We don't know firefighting. So we need to get those that do into the room to help us develop the programs. And they're chosen based on what the temperature of Central Ohio is with the workforce. In demand. If they're in demand, then we want to be training those juniors and seniors and even adults in our adult ed program so that they're ready for the workforce. So I'll take our sports medicine program that we're going to be starting in New Albany and Gahanna, which are two of our districts. In order to make that work, we have to build our advisory board first. And the advisory board are made up of those professionals from that industry. And then they help us develop the program. And once it's launched, then they stay connected as an advisory member. Advisory members are an important role. I call them the owners of the program, because we can't have a program without their investment of time in helping us keep our programs relevant. Things change all the time in industry, and we do bring an instructor comes from industry. Once they're out of that, we need to keep everything relevant. So that's where our advisory members are helpful in making that work.
Yeah. So kind of along that same line, when we're talking about like connecting businesses to the school and to the students, a lot of us have heard of apprenticeship programs, right? We know what apprenticeship looks like. What about pre-apprenticeships? John, I know you've been working in that space diligently.
Fantastic, thank you. And I love the analogy of firefighting. It's a hot topic these days. I'm going to be here for the next hour and a half.
Dad jokes, dad jokes.
So apprenticeships are very formalized, whether through the Department of Labor or down through the state of Ohio, to have a connection of training, of competency development, and then work-based experience. We've developed an on-ramp into a registered apprenticeship called pre-apprenticeship. And this very much could be a student learner or an adult. I focus in the K-12 space, so I'm going to talk about our student learners. So we've incorporated pre-apprenticeships throughout the region for juniors and seniors that first are learning a curriculum in school. So whether that's firefighting, right? And Christine's exactly right. Maybe the teacher isn't a subject matter expert, so we bring in trainers from the fire department to teach in the classroom. And then we align a work-based learning experience, which is where you come in. You are absolutely vital to this three-legged stool of curriculum and competency development, work-based learning and competency demonstration, and then the potential, if the student chooses, once they graduate, could matriculate up to a registered apprenticeship program, or oftentimes is the case, you have that almost 2 years of experience with the student learner that's being guided by the practices at your workplace, being taught curriculum in the school, and now you have the opportunity to retain that student. So they've graduated high school, you've got a true model of your emerging workforce right there, right under your roof. And so we see pre-apprenticeships developing in some of the traditional skilled trades of welding, plumbing, HVAC, but we're seeing the expansion. We are a foodie town, so we have expanded into culinary and great local culinary partners for students to get that real world experience. We are emerging into other areas, healthcare, which is super exciting, engineering. We've heard of a company coming to town in a couple of years. So we are putting some strong practices in place to develop skilled and workforce ready students that they're just ready to come to your place, right? And so these pre-apprenticeships have been ideal to help hone and develop this workforce.
Thanks, John. So, sometimes I make an assumption that, everyone understands like how an apprenticeship or a pre-apprenticeship works. Talk a little bit more, if you will, about like what that looks like. I mean, are people getting paid during this process, or, what's happening there?
I love it. So, so you're a high school junior and you have an option. You can learn in school, and then when you're done with school, after hours, you can go to any one of a fast food restaurant or an organization, make $13.50, $14.50 an hour, right? But if we do a work-based learning experience through a pre-apprenticeship, it's not required to be paid, but we certainly encourage that. We have found through the last couple of years, students are contributors to the family, whether as a result of direct financial contribution or having some self-sustainability. So when doing a pre-apprenticeship, we encourage a paid experience. There's a lot of terminology that's been thrown out around the many years, an earn and learn model, right? And then when that student, or even an adult, is in that experience and then matriculates to a registered apprenticeship program, that is absolutely a paid experience. You may have heard of, someone going into the electrical trade. So they come in and they're making $15 an hour. Then the second year, they're making $25 an hour. The third year, making $35 an hour. And they accelerate up through because they have skill attainment, right? And then their goal is to complete a registered apprenticeship program and become a journeyman. And then now, because there's so few of them, we're paying $165 an hour to have a plumber come to our home. But we're trying to build that workforce starting in high school. And more importantly, honestly, some of those experiences, we're trying to help guide students and family decision makers, even in the middle grades. So they have exposure and can experience really the potential of high school curriculum and then what comes after high school.
Thanks, John. When we think about work-based learning, you just described a couple of different models, and work-based learning can be a long-term venture, like a pre-apprenticeship or like an internship placement over a summer or a period of time during the school year, but it also can be project-based. So Tiffany, I'm going to ask you about your experience. You recently you're in the process of launching a new product. Talk to us about how you connected with Southwestern City Schools.
Sure. So Wembler, as I mentioned, is a financial technology app platform for the workforce. And when I started Wembler, I knew at some point I wanted to tap into the education space, specifically with financial literacy being a hot topic. And with a lot that has happened within our state recently, at the end of last year, with a new bill signed requiring financial literacy to be a course that is passed in order to graduate, we knew this was the perfect time. So through the chamber, we got connected to Southwestern City School District. Don is actually one of my partners in crime over there. And we connected with their mobile applications class. And that class is actually building out the MVP for Wembler Ed as we speak. So it's certainly a cost-effective way to go about it, particularly when you're a startup and technology, as I'm sure you know, is extremely expensive. So yeah, that's been our experience.
Yeah, how has that been working with Dawn and the students? I talk about like how the information is exchanged and how you set that up.
So we try to set it up to sort of model after a normal tech project. So under that model, you would have weekly status meetings or bi-weekly status meetings. And so that's how we've mapped it out. So during those status meetings, the kids are they're presenting the information that they've researched over the last week or two. They're showing what has been built so far. They're showing me code that they've mapped out. And we're saying, okay, yeah, this works, or maybe this doesn't work. What can we do to progress forward with what you've started? And the one thing that has been really good, so this MVP or this product, this app for the education space is going to be for students. So not only are we getting students that are building the product, we're getting a focus group out of them too. So there's been a lot of great feedback that they've given me. One of which being, okay, I don't know if I would really want to use this in class because it's class. I'm like, okay, well, that means we have to really, really work up the marketing aspect around it. And I gave them an example in class of McDonald's. So, I mean, if we go to McDonald's, everybody has been to McDonald's. I mean, you see all sorts of cars pull through McDonald's, whether it's, a Ford or a Porsche. Everybody goes to McDonald's. But their food isn't like it's not the best hamburger you're ever gonna have, right? But they have branded McDonald's so well that, I mean, your 2-year-old can entice you to go there because of the fries. So, I gave them that lesson around branding as we're going through the project. So, yeah.
So there's a lot of reciprocity. I mean, they're doing some great things to help build this, and you're learning a lot from them as well. So that's kind of the beauty of work-based learning and partnering with students as a business leader, is that exchange of information and that real investment in helping to build that emerging pipeline. Angie, your experience was kind of more what I would say is like a traditional internship experience, and you had a high school student at Mid-Ohio Food Collective. Tell us how that experience was, how you got connected, and what the student was doing when that person was working. Or actually, you had two interns, I think, working with you.
Yeah. So yeah, we had two interns with our technology program, and it was actually John that connected me to the state program, and it was a grant-based program. And of course, Matt Habosh was very excited to participate in that and asked if I could use additional staff. Of course, yes, I can. So they came for the summer, and they were hand selected by the teachers, and kudos to the teachers because these kids were great. They were so smart and willing to work hard and come to work every day. And so regarding their schedules, they had a transportation problem sometimes. Their mothers worked, and so that's how they got to work. And so I said, no worries, let's just make this flexible, and you just let me know each day, each week, what you want your schedule to be. So that worked out well. They were both interested in technology. And so I discussed with them which areas they would be interested in. And they were kind of both interested in web development, but I wanted to give them a wide range of areas of exposure. And so, they learned networking. They learned they build a computer out at our farm. We have an AI, a need for the Oculus, and we do 3D renderings of the farm. And so they built the actual computer for that, which they love that. We were also building a new website. And so I included them into the project meetings to see how that goes. And they even were involved in the testing, the QA part of it at the end. So they really got a wide exposure to many different areas. And in the end, one definitely wanted to stick in the web development track, and the other was still undecided, but it gave them that exposure without, when you're in high school, you don't really know what you want to do. And so that allowed them to see firsthand, what that was. I also exposed them to the business side as well, with the marketing department, so they can just get different knowledge on the other, various areas of how a business operates. But for me, it was a huge relief to have the extra staff, and they were so eager to do anything that I had asked. And I did not want to give them, intern menial tasks. I tried to give them things where they could learn and challenge them, and they took it with open arms. So it was a great experience, and I'm looking forward to doing it again this summer.
Thanks, Angie. So 2 things you said there I want to kind of touch on. One is the grant, and I'll ask John to speak to that in a moment, because that's important that we understand what resources are available to us out there as far as grant funding and support goes. And the other is kind of that flexibility and understanding, getting your workplace ready to bring in young people. And I'll ask Christine to speak to that. John, would you kick us off with talk to us about the grant? Is it still available? And
Sure.
okay.
So the grant that Angie and the Mid-Ohio Food Collective was able to participate with is a culmination of Ohio Department of Education, the Governor's Office of Workforce Transformation, and the Ohio Department of Development. They were the money. And their goal last year through Lieutenant Governor's office was to put over 100 high school IT interns into businesses, and they would encourage businesses to participate with wage reimbursement. And so they set aside a certain amount of money. They were looking for a certain number of students to participate. Angie and her team took David and Garver. They loved that experience, right? I mean, it was just so engaging, and gave them that real world application, especially because you're doing so many innovative things inside of the organization. And so that program got really strong reviews. And so Department of Development said, hey, let's fund this again. So they are doing that again this year. And what that includes is, working with school district to have workforce ready students, or at least part of the way workforce ready, because that's part of that work-based learning experience, is to learn some of the workforce skills along with competencies. And then Fortunately, the ESC of Central Ohio is an intermediary to help connect the state folks to the business, and I help channel in the relationship with the schools and the students. So they are doing that again. They have I'll just kind of broadly say that there's a deadline of having students agreeing and businesses agreeing by June 15. So we've got a little bit of a window here to develop the relationship, if it's a new relationship, or to reapply and then get students connected. And, you know, again, the goal, the governor's office really wants to try and enhance 4 areas of technology throughout the state: cybersecurity, holy cow, right? Software development, the hardware aspect of what Angie had those students do, and then just the help desk, just the technology aspect. And then there's so many tentacles inside of IT that, of course, you know, could be embraced. But the program's happening, and I'm pretty excited. And the state's also, for any healthcare organizations in the room, the state's launching a healthcare preceptor pilot this year too, for the first time. So the state recognizes that there is need to invest in our emerging workforce. So they're trying to include our businesses because you're the conduit, aren't you? You're the one that's hiring and helping to develop these young minds. So we're trying to set incentives in place to encourage that.
If I'm a business owner, a business leader here, and I want to take advantage of that or learn more, like what's step 1 for me?
Well, I'm here. Maybe I'll refrain from jokes, but I'll be here for the next hour and a half. So connect with me, please. And then, of course, I've got contact information through the chamber website. And then you could also go to Ohio Department of Education or the Governor's Office of Workforce Transformation to learn more, both about the pilot that occurred last year, and then as they are launching more information for this coming summer. But come say hi. I'll be glad to help you.
Thank you. June 15th deadline. Christine, talk about, Angie mentioned something I think is so critical, which is like getting your workplace ready, because when we're bringing in young people that are, you know, not, they're still, you know, in school, they have skill sets that may look different, you know, than what ours. What can a business do to make sure their workplace is ready to onboard a young person?
Well, I'd say first thing is flexibility, which is what Angie did, especially when it came to the transportation issue, which is an issue across the board in all areas, not just high school, but even college too. We've heard from some of our peers in colleges, Columbus State and other universities locally, that they struggle with finding transportation for some of their folks to intern. So it is a big issue. So flexibility is important. The other thing is we are preparing them with entry-level skills. So they're not fully cooked until when they come to you. And that's good, because then you get to develop them your way. It's like a build your own employee model, like John was talking about a little earlier. And that's what I advocate for, is that you're not going to get exactly what you need, but you do have the ability to grow your own. And I think that's just keeping that mindset in place, that what do I want to have and how can I take what they have here now and get there?
Sometimes too, we have to change policies, right, and procedures. So I know you've had some experience with having organizations in the healthcare space change policies, because prior to that, they wouldn't hire anyone under 18.
Yes. So when students graduate from our programs, we don't have direct contact with them. The best opportunity for an employer to connect with us is before they graduate. And so as an example, we were on a call, actually it was an in-person meeting then, with a large healthcare provider here. And they were saying, we just can't get any staffing. We need to hire, you know, they mentioned STNAs. And I said, well, we have 4, at that time we had 4, now we have 6 pre-nursing programs where juniors get their STNA and can go to work in the summer between. And he says, well, how do we get those students? I said, you need to change your policy. because your policy says they can't come to work for you until they're 18. They're at their junior level, they're 17. And I said, and we have legislators have put into act an Ohio Revised Code that states that there's an exemption for a student that's in a formalized career tech program, which these STNA students would be in, that a business can hire them under the age of 18. And so not being aware of that, and I know the number by heart, it's 4109.6 paragraph A-2. If you want me to repeat it, I can. And it's the exemption clause. So it's the labor law exemption clause that says this. And so not knowing that, we put together, our superintendent and myself put together some information and a letter and sent it to them. And they escalated it to the top of their corporation and it was approved. So they changed their policy because my stake in that was that once they leave us, you've got to spend a whole lot more marketing dollars to attract them. And they're probably not even looking that direction because somebody else has already hired them. And so they have made those accommodations. So we're glad for that. It is still a slow process because even though up at the top, they approved it, it has to filter all the way down. And HR is still kind of changing their applications don't allow for anybody under 18. So that was an issue. When we had STNAs that wanted to apply to certain places, the application stopped them because when they had to put in their date of birth, it would not allow. So we're working through that, but it was a huge win.
So what we need to do is hire an IT intern to help change the
yeah.
code
Right.
to help with that. And to piggyback too, the state of Ohio, really in talking with other states around the country, is really innovative in trying to make the connection of employers to our emerging workforce. So not only does Ohio Revised Code allow for students that are in a formalized career technical education program, but also if they're in a pre-apprenticeship program now, or if that they are doing work-based learning that the state has passed recently, and it'll soon be available for tax incentives for employers to provide these work-based learning experiences. And the state Ohio Department of Education has a very formalized outlook for work-based learning. It's meaningful. It can be tracked. There are competencies. There are agreements between school, student, employer, and family member. And so it's very formalized. But I'll add that there are many on-roads to you as employers in the room to a little more loosely defined work-based learning. So schools right now are doing a ton of college and career fairs. That's a great opportunity to get in front of students and teachers because the students will graduate, but the teacher could be there and be your advocate. There's opportunity to go into the school and be a guest speaker, whether that's in person, hopefully soon, or virtually, to be able to engage. There's opportunities to host a tour at your work site for down to the middle grades and high schools. There's so many different opportunities for you as employers to bring the message to our students and teachers beyond something that's as formal as an internship or as formal as a pre-apprenticeship program or as formal as a relationship of creating apps between a school district, students, and employer. There's other ways that you can be involved.
No, thanks, John. We talked a lot about the benefits of hiring and engaging with students, but we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about some of the things that are considerations, things that businesses may have to do as far as accommodations. We talked about flexibility. What other things can businesses do? I mean, we know, again, they're 16, 17 years old, 18 maybe. What can businesses do to make sure that these students are safe, that their business is safe, that their customers are safe? What advice would you give, any of you?
I would say be really patient with the students. I mean, like Christine said, they're still cooking. And so I have a high schooler and I have a middle schooler personally. So during one of our meetings, the teacher that's working on the project with the students, I could tell he felt sorry that there were a couple students in the class on their phones. And, I'm like, so at the end of it, nothing was said during class, but at the end of it, he had a call with me. And I said, trust me, I totally get it. It's not a big deal at all, particularly when you see their performance. But it's an opportunity for them to learn, okay, our meetings have been virtual with the exception of the first one. So this is an opportunity for them to learn, okay, if I am in a position that is remote and I have these deliverables that I have to present on a weekly basis or a bi-weekly basis, this is an opportunity for me to learn certain types of etiquette throughout that process. And I'm sure as employers, we would prefer them to learn that etiquette now in high school, rather than for them to be, 27 in the workplace and have to call that out. So I would say certainly be patient with them and just really see what's inside of them, see that they're extremely intelligent, they have value to add, and let that sort of take high priority over some of the kinks that just still may need to be ironed out.
And I add something onto it. So we hear a lot from employers, well, they just won't put their phone down, right? And depending on the type of work they're doing, it's important that they do. They're still like that little kid that keeps asking why. If you just tell them and explain to them why the phone cannot be used right now, they're perfectly willing to do it. They're not as willing to take direct order, right? So, but if you explain the why on anything that you're doing, the why for why we're doing it this way, why we're doing this, why you have to put your phone down, so I think that's the other thing that's important to remember is the why.
Yeah, and I just want to add something to that. And I think if you take it from the angle as it's a partnership, right? You're both getting value out of that. And so, continually asking them, is this meeting your expectations? Is there something else that you want to learn? Is there a different area? Is there something that sparked your interest that you didn't know would? And then giving them that opportunity to explore that further. And, once that happens, you're both fully vested into it. And there's just, more value that comes out of it.
And I think it depends on the students and the school district in which you engage. You get students from around the northern part of the outer belt, they're most likely going to have transportation. They're most likely going to have a debit card to buy their own lunch, right? They're going to most likely have a supportive home environment to ensure that they're meeting the standards as been expressed to them. They can support that, right? But if you engage in different districts where some of that family dynamic looks very different than that, then yes, the transportation, right? That could very much be an obstacle. So it's an awareness of that, right? Some students in our area, a lot of students in our area are very accustomed to getting lunch. Free lunch, exactly. And so a consideration is in your work environment, are you hoping to support that? Whether it's just somebody brings in a brown bag or a pizza or just something to ensure, because that either that breakfast or that lunch, in some instances, I mean, that's their meal for the day. And that's just real world for the student, right? But that does not and should not distract from the fact that they are eager to learn. They are eager to meet the standards and expectations that you put in front of them. They want to do well. They are yearning to do well. And I'd also throw this out for consideration, just by show of hands, if you don't mind. How many of you bring on college interns? A third of the room. That is fantastic. You now have, as a college intern, an advocate to help message and mentor when you bring on a high school student. So capitalize on that relationship and on that resource within the organization, because you've got a model for continuing education. You've got a model for development. You've got a model for skill attainment. right? For whatever that priority is within the organization. And so, that's something that you could consider as you are bringing, it's like, I just don't know if I have the capacity or the man hours, the working hours, pardon my French there, the working hours of bringing on this additional, human resource need. Well, if you're taking a college intern in, boy, that's a great thing to add to their job description. Educate down and lift up.
Please do.
Just to highlight the fact that these kids truly understand value proposition. So a personal story, the other day, my oldest son, who is in high school, a freshman in high school, I asked, the high schools, or at least his high school, uses Schoology. I don't know if anybody's familiar, but you can go into the app, you can see all of their grades, all of their assignments, all of their tests, you can see what they made on it, everything. So I went in and I'm like, Josh, why are these assignments not done? Now I'm seeing the test scores, which are fine, but I'm seeing that there are assignments with zeros. And he said, Mom, they're only worth a point. He said the amount of time that I would spend on that is the same amount of time I would spend on a grade that's on a test that's worth 30% of my grade. So why should I do it? So, the parent in me is like, oh, no, we're not doing that. But the business side of me is like, oh my God, yes, you get it, So, but then I had to go back to the mom side. But my point being, they understand value and they understand that they can add value. And I think it's a mindset that, at least for me and probably for many people in my generation, it took us a little longer to realize that. And I think it's worth recognizing that they understand it really early with all of the resources at their disposal.
Thank you. John gave us a couple of ideas for on-ramps, and I'm going to ask each one of you maybe very quickly to think about that from a small business perspective. And then we may have time, I think, for a few questions from all of you. Very quickly, small business person, step one.
Call me.
Easy.
And if you call me and you're not in the community in which our students live, because again, back to the transportation, I'm very cognizant of that. I do connect with my fellow peers at the career centers. Actually, we all meet during the school year on the second Friday. So along with John and some others. So we share connections. There's no competition in that space. We all want a good place for our students to work. So it starts with a phone call.
I agree. Connect with any of the educators, connectors in the room. But I would also suggest, as a small business, you can start small with just some of that engagement with either your most closest school district or school, high school, middle school is a good way to start, right? And then as you begin to engage with students, consider, hey, I'd like to have a student on a pretty regular basis. But what if you had one student for 1 week and they rotate out and they had another student for another week and then another student? And it's not always necessarily a retraining, but it's just broadening the exposure. Because I do absolutely recognize that there is a resource drain on the small business as you are trying to get business done to oversee a student. But rightfully so, there's huge benefit though in making that connection. So first step, connect.
Yeah, and along those lines, connect with your business partners. Halfway through the internship program, it would come up in discussion, and I realized they had interns too. And I'm like, oh, well, let's collaborate on our plan, our program for the internship. So just making that connection and sharing notes, and it's a lot of work creating that plan. So to have that help is very beneficial.
I would say if you're here and you're not a chamber member, a Columbus of chamber, thank you. If you're not a chamber member, become one. And if you are one, stay one, because there are so many resources within the chamber that are just, to me, supernatural, to be completely honest with you. And when the people that you speak with start to hear your story, and then they hear of the stories of other businesses, they actually start to make the connections for you, which is why I said it's supernatural. So again, if you're not a chamber member, become one. If you are one, absolutely stay one.
Thank you, Tiffany. I think we have time for a few questions, and Hope's gonna grab one of the mics. Anybody in the group have any questions? Hope right back here.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Evans from Greenleaf Job Training Services. I'm just interested in how you're engaging students with disabilities and how you're engaging students who maybe have other barriers to employment. How are you helping employers break down those barriers?
Good question. We have a program for, first of all, we don't exclude them from our programs at all. But we also have a program called Employability Prep that takes a student that has learning differences who chose not to go to one of our programs, and they go right to work. And our instructors are their coaches. So they work with them, they'll go in, they talk with the business owner or the manager, whomever is there with that they are working with, to make sure that there aren't any gaps or anything that has to be handled outside of that work. In fact, if you come to the annual meeting on March 31st, you will see a video of our employability prep instructor, Kathy McKee, who will be there talking about that program. So that's a good question. We do also have a project search program with some students that delayed graduation and stayed in that program, and they're down at Fairfield Medical Center. But we have a huge amount of resources for students with different abilities and learning differences. So those are a couple of things that we have.
Any other questions?
I can share from an ESC perspective that we are, and Jennifer, that's a great question. Thanks for being an advocate. We align with an organization called Ocali, and that is a strong organization to help individuals connect and then build out intervention specialists within a school district or through the ESC to help partner with families and that student learner, emerging workforce contributor to work side by side with them. So I think that there are programs. Is there broader awareness needed for inclusion on that? I think so, absolutely, as there are for several of our talent pools. But one thing, as an example, with a pre-apprenticeship that is created to eventually either matriculate to the registered apprenticeship, to the registered apprenticeship, or into the workforce, is that there's an application process and eligibility that's created through the school. And that eligibility is, hey, are you on the path to graduation? Are you maintaining your grades? Have you taken a particular class to help as a prereq to get into? So it's trying to maintain equitable practices for experiences and opportunity.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Well, we thank you all here today. We thank the panel. You guys have been a great conversation and a great resource, and lots of things to continue to help our members and to others in the community. So I'm going to ask Heather Todd. Hi, Heather, for some closing remarks. Yeah.
Hello. So I am actually a post-secondary student. So when I was in high school, I went to college for 2 years in 2000 something, right? And I will say that was an amazing experience because I didn't run into the fact that right when I graduated college, I didn't have any experience, so I wasn't hireable. So I will say to the resume piece of that it was amazing to be a student and going in and having a little bit of background before getting hired. So I am Heather with Local IQ. Thank you so much for having us. We're really excited. It's been a pleasure to be part of this experience and help wrapping this up. Local IQ is a proud partner of the Columbus Chamber in its experience series. We recognize the importance of facilitating these conversations. And we understand that right now in the nation's economy, culture, and communities,
businesses that have local roots. You're part of creating jobs. You're part of the nature of our neighborhoods, and you make a mark that matters. We are also local. I mean, it's just part of our name. And we have kids that go to school here. We have parents that live here. And so when we're talking to businesses alike, we want to make sure that you're thriving because your success also keeps us up at night. So we do want to say that we are part of USA Today. And with that, we have USA Today data. So right now we are reaching about 1 in 2 adults in the US, and then in Ohio, about 8 out of 10 people. So we are always happy to talk to you about data. We love to actually. And we're also happy to talk to you about budget efficiency, or if you have branding or awareness, recruiting, those are all areas that we are able to assist with. And we understand when it comes to after post-COVID that you may not have a huge budget to work with, or you're, hey, Heather, I don't know that I have any budget, but I know I need to move towards a different route. We are always happy to talk to you about budget efficiencies, and ideas are always free, absolutely free. So we do hope that in the future, you're able to look at localiq.com. We do have a hub there with a lot of resources that you guys can tap into and webinars as well. So we hope you consider joining us again for future Columbus Chamber programs, including the upcoming experience conversation. More information can be found on columbus.org/events. And if you parked in the Marconi garage, if you would like your parking ticket validated, you are able to go up to the front desk to do so. And thank you so much, and we look forward to seeing you guys again.